This is not an ordinary Christmas morning like the ones before. Don't be blinded by the glittering decorations on the tree or the pile of gifts scattered on the floor. Instead, take a closer look at the woman's face. Her expression does not radiate joy. There is not a single smile, just a look of deep contemplation and unresting anxiety. Now take a closer look at the shirt she is wearing. Emblazoned on it are the words, "Find Jessyca." This is Monica Lukasavige, and her nightmare began over 3 months ago when her 13-year-old daughter, Jessyca, suddenly vanished without a trace. This heartbreaking turn of events has completely transformed her life. Monica spends every moment searching for Jessyca, hoping that one day the girl will return home safely. The Find Jessyca shirt is not just a call for help from the community, but also a symbol of resilience and never giving up hope. In the chill of winter, a mother's heart remains warm with love and the belief that light will overcome darkness and that Jessyca will find her way back home. On September 15, 1995, Jessyca's father picked her up for a scheduled weekend visit. However, just 2 days later, Jessyca suddenly disappeared without a trace. The family then received a letter from her, in which Jessyca wrote that she had run away and was in a safe place. As soon as she skimmed the first lines of the letter, Jessyca's mother felt an unnerving abnormality. "I know how my daughter speaks. I know how she writes," she shared. Although the handwriting on the letter belonged to Jessyca, every word seemed as if it was dictated, as if someone else was directing her to write according to a prearranged script. This letter ignited a deep fear in her heart, because she knew that behind those meticulously written words hid a dark truth she could never have anticipated. Monica's ex-husband informed her that Jessyca was supposed to go on a trip that weekend with a teacher's assistant to meet a publisher interested in her writing. However, there was no trace of either the assistant or Jessyca, but the family refused to give up, continuing their desperate search across the country for over 100 days. This is a terrifying nightmare that no one would ever want to imagine. Even if 10 years pass, I will never stop searching for the girl. In 1995, 13-year-old Jessyca lived with her family in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Her parents were divorced, and she spent most of her time with her mother. Especially during her parents' divorce, Jessyca found comfort in expressing her emotions through art and writing. She even joined a writing club led by a teacher's aide at school. On September 15, 1995, Jessyca went to her dad's house for a scheduled weekend visit. However, 2 days later, Jessyca's mom received a worried call from her ex-husband. He informed her that Jessyca was missing, and he suspected she had run away. Jessyca's mother immediately sensed that something was wrong and demanded to know the truth. He said, "I think Jessyca may have left home." I knew that didn't make sense, and I said, "Who is she staying with?" At first, he didn't want to say, and I shouted, "Who is she staying with?" He finally admitted, "Stephen Oliver." In 1991, 4 years prior, new neighbors moved in next door to Jessyca. They were Stephen Oliver and his son Ryan. Jessyca and Ryan, the children, often played together, while Ryan's father landed a job at the elementary school as a teacher's aide. He quickly recognized Jessyca's talent and passion for writing, leading her to join a writing club that he supervised. At 7:53 p.m., the local police got a call about a missing girl in Tracy. Officers canvassed the trailer park, questioning residents in hopes of finding Sandra's whereabouts, but their efforts yielded no results. So the police turned to the security camera. After careful consideration, Jessyca's mother decided to call Stephen Oliver to address the issue. During the conversation, she expressed her concerns and explained that they didn't feel comfortable with the relationship between Stephen and Jessyca. She wanted to ensure that her daughter's well-being and security were the top priorities. Meanwhile, Stephen Oliver listened and understood Jessyca's mother's perspective. He didn't resist, but instead showed genuine sincerity in apologizing for any inconvenience caused. He accepted Jessyca's mother's decision and wished the family well. This somewhat eased Jessyca's mother's worries and reaffirmed her decision. Shortly after Monica told him she didn't want him spending time with her daughter, the Olivers suddenly moved out of the house next door. Both Jessyca and her mom felt a significant sense of relief, but it was immediately replaced with fear when they found out where his new home was, right across from Jessyca's dad's place. Chills went up and down my spine, and I thought, oh my God, there's something wrong with this guy. Monica shared her concerns with her ex-husband, Dale, but he brushed them aside, believing that Oliver seemed like a good person and there was no need to worry. Monica even contacted a lawyer to see if she could prevent her ex-husband from allowing that man to visit their daughter, but she knew it wasn't within her rights. In September 1995, her worst nightmare became a reality. Dale explained that Stephen Oliver was taking Jessyca to get her writing published, and they needed to meet with the publisher in Madison, Wisconsin, but they didn't return. He hadn't informed Monica about allowing Oliver to take her on a trip alone, and she would never have let her daughter go with him if she had known. The parents went to the police station to report Jessyca missing, unaware of where their daughter had gone. Just a few days later, a letter arrived from Jessyca, but it wasn't the news they were hoping for. "Don't come looking for me. I'm in a safe place," were the words written on the paper. Monica immediately sensed something was off from the way the letter was written. It didn't reflect Jessica's usual demeanor, the girl she had grown accustomed to over the years. It felt like every word, every sentence, wasn't from her daughter, but rather was scripted to be sent out. Right from the first lines, she sensed that, Monica said. "I know how my daughter speaks. I know how my daughter writes." It sounded like it was dictated to her. Fear and anxiety overwhelmed her thoughts, the feeling of restlessness, not knowing where her daughter was and whether she was safe or not. The worried questions incessantly swirled in Monica and Dale's minds, and they couldn't find the answers. While the letter made it seem like Jessyca had left home, her mother had previously harbored concerns about Stephen Oliver and felt that there was more to the story than met the eye. However, she herself couldn't fathom the true extent of the pain hidden behind her daughter's words. Jessyca had encountered Stephen Oliver when she was only in 3rd grade, and no one else knew the extent of what he had done to her, which was much worse than just spending more time with her than with other kids. Little did anyone anticipate that Oliver would pull me aside and say, "Follow me," then lead me into his house. Each time he would lock the door and place me on his lap. In those moments, I felt trapped in a room filled with haunting and pain. He deceived her by telling her that no one would ever love her and that she wasn't intelligent or attractive. He sexually abused her, and if she didn't comply with his instructions, he would hit her. "He threatened to kill my family members and then me if I told anyone," she said. "And because I didn't want my parents to suffer, I was terrified of that." The fear and coercion from Stephen Oliver had imprisoned Jessica's mind and spirit, making her feel trapped with no way out and too afraid to speak the truth about what had happened. This left her feeling lonely, helpless, and desperate, unsure of how to escape from this nightmare. The police offered a $5,000 reward for Sandra's discovery. 230 skilled search and rescue volunteers, representing government agencies, scoured the area tirelessly. Going from door to door, they questioned evidence. Still, the offender was still hiding in plain sight. Jessyca ardently desires to keep her family safe. The prolonged abuse persisted until Oliver decided to isolate her from her family. On September 16, 1995, Jessica's father resolved to send her on a trip alone with Oliver. Her family remained oblivious to the true circumstances, with her father thinking he was merely assisting her with her studies and writing. Early in the morning, Jessyca obeyed her father's orders and departed with Oliver. In the car, she fell asleep, hoping without hope that he was telling the truth when he said he was taking her to see a publisher. However, Jessica's darkest nightmares came true as she awoke. "He handcuffed my hands behind my back and secured my feet to the bottom of the automobile. 'You're a piece of sot-e,' he told me. 'No one loves you, and no one wants you. No one will be searching for you, and you will never return home.' I feel utterly terrified, realizing that I will never see my family again. Jessyca has no clue where they are or what Oliver is planning to do. He dictates that from now on, she must address him as Dad, and her name is now Cindy Johnson, while he adopts the identity of Dave Johnson. How will he treat me? Will he kill me?" Despite Jessica's utmost efforts, worry and fear still engulf her as she frets over the outcome of this dark journey. They pull into an airport parking lot, deliberating on their next move. Suddenly, Oliver produces a knife out of nowhere, intensifying the atmosphere with tension and fear. With airport security not as stringent as it is today, he can easily carry a weapon without detection. Jessyca can't help but wonder if he'll use that knife to threaten her or even cause harm. There were no metal detectors, no surveillance cameras, and no security guards, so he kept a knife to my back the whole time. Nobody knows that Jessyca disappeared. However, she still hopes that someone will see her in such a prominent spot and ask what's going on. As the flight takes off, Jessyca can only think about her family, wondering if they'll be able to find her. The police rush to Stephen Oliver's residence in Eau Claire, where they find his son and ex-wife. Stephen Oliver orchestrated a reunion between his ex-wife and their son. The son was under Stephen Oliver's care at that time. In fact, he even coerced his ex-wife into moving in with their son. This was not a spontaneous decision. Stephen Oliver had spent a significant amount of time preparing for this journey. As they explored the house, they discovered several unsettling receipts, providing further insight into Oliver's plan. He had purchased a number of items that we managed to locate, including rope, what appeared to be duct tape, a knife, items that are suitable for securing someone. He clearly orchestrated this entire plan to abduct her. Investigators interview Stephen Oliver's neighbors, co-workers, anyone connected to him, to gather as much detailed information as possible. The search for Jessyca quickly becomes more crucial. Her family works to spread her name and face everywhere, putting up posters, participating in TV interviews, and more. As new information continues to emerge, new leads also come to light, with the police receiving reports of suspected sightings of Jessyca, but none leading to concrete results. Time passes, and there's no news of Jessyca for many months. As winter approaches, her family is extremely worried that she might be held in a place without a heating system amidst the cold weather. Disturbingly, the murder appeared to have been meticulously planned. Investigators uncovered Melissa's internet search history and found an article detailing a similar crime involving a hidden body in a suitcase. Previously, you could board a plane simply by claiming to be Joe Smith without any rigorous identity checks. Therefore, when the police reviewed the passenger lists from these flights, they found no significant information useful for the investigation. The laxity in regulatory controls significantly complicated the search and verification efforts. After completing their flight, Stephen Oliver quickly gathered all the necessary items to alter their appearances. He not only cut Jessica's hair short, but also dyed it a deep dark shade, aiming to make her less recognizable to others. This was done meticulously to ensure that even if someone saw them, they would not be able to easily identify Jessyca. Then he takes her to a nearby hotel, and when they approach the front desk, he concocts a story using their fake identities as a father and daughter, Dave and Cindy Johnson. Huckabee pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It seems unlikely that someone would prefer life in jail to the death penalty, but Melissa didn't appear to want to live. Her incidents of self-harm became more frequent and brutal over time. They believe his story and give them a room. However, Oliver quickly becomes paranoid about being discovered and frequently peers outside, scanning the parking lot for any Midwestern license plates. Feeling nervous, they move to another hotel. He tells them the same story and mentions that he will be homeschooling his daughter, so she won't be leaving the hotel room much. When I first entered the motel room, it was dusty, very dark, and scary. Cockroaches were everywhere. It was just incredibly disgusting. I used to cry in the middle of the night after realizing Oliver was asleep. I knew it was a terrible situation and that I would not be seeing my family again. Jessyca was terrified beyond belief. Oliver shut the door behind him, and she hurriedly attempted to get out. However, she quickly discovered that the door had been safely secured from the outside, trapping her. I had no way of getting out or running away. He carried the key with him at all times. He coldly said, "I will kill you and I will stab you." In my mind, there was no doubt that he could do that because he had stabbed me before. Oliver had already inflicted harm on Jessyca, but even when faced with his threats, she remained undeterred. She noticed an old rotary phone in the room, and when he left again, she quickly rushed to the phone. But all I could think about was that maybe he was right to call me stupid, since I couldn't even figure out how to make a phone call to my mother. I had lost all hope of ever seeing my family again. Jessica's hope gradually fades as days turn into weeks, and weeks into months. Oliver regularly abuses her physically, emotionally, and sexually. I was never allowed to leave that space. Most of the time, I was tied to the bed in the hotel room. Because I was deemed fat and ugly, I wasn't allowed to eat whenever I wanted. I knew that my friends and parents were searching for me, but memories of them seemed to fade away. As Jessica's abductor begins to blur her mind, her family refuses to give up. Their determination stems from the hope of encountering Jessyca again, and they strive to come up with fresh ideas every day on how they can contribute to the search. They succeeded in placing Jessica's image on posters on the backs of semi-trucks and billboards, helping to spread her story nationwide. Monica sought help from her brother, and he went to great lengths to track down Jessyca. Jessyca feels a connection to her family through prayer, even as she gradually loses her sense of identity. She also recalls a motivating quote from her mother. "That's something my mother used to say, that if something terrible happened, she would find me and my siblings. So I knew that my family in Wisconsin would be searching for me. That's all I needed to survive, to think about going back home and being with my family again." 104 days after Jessyca disappeared, on December 28, 1995, FBI investigator Jerry Southworth received a call that completely transformed the course of the investigation. The phone, "Did you strangle her too hard?" Joe, from the other end of the line, seemingly admitted his actions with a brief response. "Yes."
In the dead of night at the hotel, Jessyca suddenly woke up feeling confused and scared. The sound of pounding on the door continued relentlessly. Oliver calmly said, "Don't do anything. Stay quiet." Then, the banging on the door came again, along with the announcement, "We are the FBI." I didn't know that the FBI was coming to help me. All I could think of was that strangers were barging into the room. They flaunted their badges. I was puzzled and thought, could this be a fake? And panic overwhelmed me. Is this real? Can I really go back home safely?
The autopsy conducted thereafter determined that Carly's cause of death was strangulation with a rope, noting that she had been brutally assaulted prior to her passing. Further testing also revealed Joseph's DNA traces along with strands of his hair on Carly's body and clothing, further strengthening the evidence against him.
In a tense and panicked moment, when FBI agents ask for her name, Jessyca hesitantly replies, "Cindy Johnson." That is the name Oliver forced her to use to hide her true identity. It seems she has forgotten what it feels like to be called by her real name, Jessyca. She has lost herself in the continuous flight, entangled web of lies, and now, despite being safe, Jessyca still feels adrift between the real world and the world Oliver had fabricated. When Jessyca was brought to the FBI field office, the investigators showed her own photographs. Yet, in her mind, the shadow of Cindy Johnson continued to haunt her relentlessly. However, things began to shift when they allowed Jessyca to call her mother. It was the moment when everything started to clear up. After 3.5 long, arduous months of not knowing if she would ever hear her mother's loving voice again, she suddenly heard it from the other end of the line. The anticipation and hope of reuniting with her family ignited a strong resolve in Jessyca to endure through the hardships. Thanks to the unwavering persistence of those who never ceased searching for her, the specter of Cindy Johnson finally vanished. Jessyca, with all her being, had returned, ready to start a new chapter in her life, free from the nightmare she had endured. As soon as she received the news, Jessyca's mother booked the earliest flight to Houston. Throughout the long flight, she was consumed with worry and anticipation for the moment she would see her daughter again.
Finally, at the airport, an emotional moment unfolded as she and Jessyca reunited. They embraced tightly, hardly believing that after so many days filled with anxiety and concern, they could stand together like this. After 104 days of fluctuating between hope and despair, not knowing whether her daughter was alive or not, Jessyca's mother had endured a tormenting wait. But now, all the fears had dissipated, replaced by joy as the mother and daughter were reunited. Jessyca has finally freed herself from the control of Stephen Oliver. After more than 3 months of enduring hardship and pressure, she returned home and slept in her own familiar bed for the first time. Although no longer harmed by anyone, Jessyca's journey of recovery is still long and fraught with challenges. She faces many trials, not only from the mental anguish, but also from the physical injuries inflicted by Oliver's brutal beatings. These wounds, though no longer bleeding, continue to ache and remind her of those dark times. By refusing to let Oliver dictate her life and fate, Jessyca affirmed her personal power and resolved to live a life free from anyone's hold. She chose to stand up, not submit to the challenges, and continue fighting for her right to live a normal and happy life. Stephen Oliver was brought to trial in June 1996. Jessyca's testimony would prove to be crucial in securing his conviction. Oliver's attorneys attempted to argue that she had enticed him to Texas and had accompanied him voluntarily. Jessyca endured hours of testimony, reliving each detail of her ordeal, but she bravely shared her story. She did this not only to bring Oliver to justice, but also to ensure that he would no longer have the opportunity to harm anyone else. Her courageous and determined sharing of her painful experiences demonstrated her strong resolve to confront her past and protect the future of others. He has been sentenced to a 40-year prison term, with no possibility of early release. This severe sentence reflects the gravity of the crimes he committed and sends a clear message about the judicial system's commitment to protecting victims and society from serious criminal behavior.